All right, Banshee Fever 750 running the camera solo style. Here we got a 6.2 liter Detroit diesel stacked inside of a 2002 Isuzu Trooper with side pipes, dual exhaust, glass packs running straight to the front of the wheels, split individual pipe per side. Reason to see that gas cap's open over there. All right, what we're doing here is we're turning up the injector pump. I've got everything done to this truck mechanically as far as good as I can run it. Oil filters, all the injectors are clean. Everything's good to go. Okay, so what happens is when I step on the throttle, it doesn't roll any coal, and I think it's because of the straight pipes in the back are creating a little more airflow. So not that you want it to roll coal, but I guess a little puff of black initially is letting you know that you're burning good. You know what I mean? If you're constantly rolling coal, then that means there's a lot of unburnt fuel going through there, high EGT temperatures. Now remember, this is a 6.2 NA, so I don't have the EGTs on there. I'd like to put some on, but I'm not going crazy here. I can safely go, from everything I've read and all the research I've done, you can go a 1/16 of a turn. And that's exactly what I did. I'm not going a quarter. A quarter's for the turbo models. If you're adding a turbo, you can go a quarter turn. So I'm going a 1/16 of a turn. That should be enough. Some guys run a quarter and they roll coal over the place and it looks pretty awesome and all that. But I just wanted a little more torque, so I can let it shift into all of its gears, and when I'm going up a hill, I can just give it half throttle and the torque will kick in and just get me up the hill without over revving. So this is what I did. I'm going to show you what I did. It's pretty intuitive, pretty straightforward. As you can see there, that's a 5/32 wrench, and if you look there inside, see that little hole in there? That's the adjustment screw. So originally I was pointed about there, and then I turned it till I was there, which is a 1/16. It's a little bit more than a 1/16. This would have been half, roughly half, or no, a quarter would have been right here, and then that would have been a half, 3/4, and then a full turn. So I went just a 1/16. This isn't a dragster. I'm not trying to pull big power out of this. I'm just trying to get it to run a little bit better. Like I said, I'm running an open exhaust into glass packs and a decent air filter, so I just wanted to get a little more torque for going up and down the hills, and with less RPM. So that's the goal. I could put a turbo on here. That's easy to do. Maybe that'll be later on down the line, but for right now, it's about fuel economy. I did one last test and I was about 19.7 miles per gallon. That's not bad. That's measuring the fuel out of the tank, measuring the mileage per GPS. So I would assume that that's about as accurate as you can get. So that 19.7 with the 430 final drive gear, which is a tall gear, averaging 62 to 63 miles an hour. A couple times I've had it wide open, about 5-6 times going up hills just to clear it out a little bit. And that's what I've been averaging. So I should be able to get better. And I also found out I had a bad lift pump. So I just replaced that, so hopefully the fuel economy will be a little bit better. So we'll see as time goes on. Eventually I would like to put a 373 gear back there, and that'll help with the fuel economy. Because the whole point of this Trooper is a fuel economy. You know, this isn't a tow rig or nothing. This is made for fuel economy. If I'm going to tow 1 or 2 ATVs, it'll do it. If I'm doing a solo run, going on an ATV ride by myself, and I want to go far, then I can do it and not burn fuel. So there we go. Also don't want to ramble too much, but there's how I got this set up. This was the top screw. There's 3 screws. They mount on this top cover. As you can see, there's a top cover. This is the return line, so this is facing forward. So this bolt right here went to this one here. The one on the right went to the one on the right here. And obviously the one on the left went to the left side. So I try to keep it all in order. There's the throttle slide right there, throttle mechanism. So I kept that just as it was. I pulled it out as gently as I could and put it there without too much moving around. The gasket's still intact. Everything looks good in here. There weren't any leaks prior. This is a reusable gasket. I'm probably going to clean it up around here a little bit. It's kind of a little bit of a grungy motor, but once it proves its worth, then I'll go ahead and do some touches on there like I did the Banshee, the street bike powered Banshee I've got on another vid. But just so you know, what I did was, once you remove the cap, okay, what you're going to find is a nut back here. See this shaft? Now I only pulled it out far enough where I didn't pull it out of this other secondary spring system back here. You can see it. So I pulled it just back enough, and then I put a magnetic stop in the back. That way that doesn't slide out and all these springs, you know, get popped out and the secondary linkage gets popped out of place. So that was my method of doing that. And then I siphoned. This thing was full of fuel up to the top. So what I did was I used my syringe here that I use for mixing fuel in the 2 strokes, and I pulled out about 180 cc's of fuel. That way I can see the hole and I can see the Allen screw. And I was going to put the fuel back in my catch can, but then I actually said, you know what, 180 cc's of fuel might give me 100 miles on this Trooper the way things are going. You know, all jokes aside, so I just put it back in the fuel tank. It was all clean, so I just dumped it back in the fuel tank, and you can see what goes back in there. So I don't have my camera guy here to film the whole thing, but so that, just so you know, this screw, the injection pump screw, it wasn't easy to turn. You're gonna have to use some force on there. At first I was a little worried about it, so what I did was I turned it counterclockwise and then I turned it clockwise just to make sure it wasn't already maxed out or something. You know, I wasn't sure, you know, what the previous owner with this engine did. Prior to putting in here, you know, this truck, it came out of a Blazer, or I'm sorry, a Silverado. In 1984, Silverado is where this Detroit diesel came out of. So, you know, who knows what was set up there before. It's a newer injection pump. It had all the marks on there. You see the glue? All the bolts were glued down, so I'm assuming it was a new pump and it was set to factory specs. So, but just in case, you know, you never know, somebody else can have something like that inside of a container in their garage, and you know, if they're a mechanic, maybe this is how they like to do things. But I'm going to assume this came out of the factory like this, because this injection pump is a newer pump. So we turned it a 1/16 of an inch of turn. That's it. The fuel that was in there, I took it out with this, okay, and I put it back in the tank, and that's that. So I'm going to reassemble everything. As you can see, there really wasn't anything to it. So prior to this assembly, you take the air filter cover, the air filter, the housing off, and then all I did was, if you can look here, I took the, this is the return line, right, for the fuel. And I took the linkage, and you see the fast idle, the high idle. I just loosened up the bolts on this side, and then I just slid it over. You see the bolts down there, there's 2 bolts. I loosened it up, and I just cocked it over just a few degrees so I can get to the screws. I turned the engine. On this particular engine, I couldn't just go from the bottom like, you know, normal. So I actually had to take a, turn it with the belt with the serpentine with the power steering pump, and a wrench on the power steering pump and a wrench on the alternator bolt, and just lightly turn the engine until I can see that mark. And it took quite a bit, so I'm assuming the mark was, it was probably to the right of where it is, and I had to go full revolution on the injection pump. But anyways, I don't want to bore you with too many details. It's that simple. From what I understood, and when you put this cap back on, you have to come back a little bit, you know, offset from the bolt, offset the cap from the bolts just a little bit back, and you slide it in, walk it in. That way it's not just pushing down on this, because there's a lever there that shuts it off. You don't want to just smash it down on this and destroy your linkages and cause a problem to have a runaway situation. So you push down and you slide it forward, and then you gently bolt it down, and you know, lightly torque the bolts. You know, I don't know how many inch-pounds, I don't have the specs on me about for the bolts, but that's that. So we'll see how it runs. Like I said, I'm hoping on achieving a little bit of a little more torque for up and down the hills, or actually up the hills, and less revving. So remember, this is inside of an Isuzu Trooper with the 430 gear, so it's 2,000 pounds less than the original application that this engine was in. So the original application, the pickup that this engine was in, weighed about 7,200 pounds. We're at about 4,200. So maybe with this engine, maybe we're at 4,500 pounds. So just under 2,000 pounds. So anyways, Banshee Fever 750, just wanted to go over this with you. Don't be afraid to do it. Just go a 1/16 of a turn. You know, these guys are going a quarter turn. You know, when you follow up on them, they're rolling coal everywhere. But a lot of these guys, some guys have had good luck. Fewer guys have had luck and never had a problem with melting pistons. More guys have had problems with melting pistons and having engine problems. So if you just want a little more spunk out of your 6.2, you turn it up a 1/16 of a turn. You can go a little tweak more, but then that's it. Stop there, you know, unless you want to shorten your engine longevity. Like I said, there's some guys that have had luck with it, pulling trailers, 7,000 pound trailers going up and down hills. That's great. You know, they've been lucky. You know, maybe they've got a great flowing system. Maybe they've got the J manifold in there off the military Humvees, which I'm looking at a few right now. I may end up doing that also. That's supposed to add a good 20 to 25 horsepower from what I heard with the added fuel. So anyways, like I said, it's not a dragster. It's just kind of playing around with it. It's nice to have the extra torque and not have to downshift when I'm lugging around. So Banshee Fever 750 over and out. We'll keep in touch. There's the Banshee. I gotta get working on that, and keep in touch. Rate, review, subscribe, comment, whatever you'd like to do. Let's keep in touch. Banshee Fever 750 over and out.